Korean War, the forgotten conflict that never ended. It was a war with no winners, a war with no end, an open wound in a peninsula split in two. Between 1950 and 1953, the world witnessed one of the most intense conflicts of the Cold War. The Korean War, a clash that left millions dead, and a silence that still echoes. Between 1950 and 1953, the Korean Peninsula became the battlefield of an undeclared global war. Two ideologies, two superpowers, millions of lives caught in the crossfire. The Korean War marked a turning point in 20th century history, but to many, it remains a forgotten war. Today we tell its story, a story that has yet to end. It all began after World War II. Japan surrendered, and the Korean Peninsula was divided in two. In the north under Soviet influence, in the south under American influence. The border was drawn at the 38th parallel. But it was more than a line. It was an ideological fracture. In the north, a communist regime led by Kim Il-sung. In the south, a non-communist government backed by the United States. On June 25, 1950, North Korea crossed that line. It invaded the South, aiming to unify the peninsula under its rule. Thus began one of the bloodiest wars of the century. North Korean troops advanced rapidly. Within weeks, they had taken almost the entire South. But the United States and the UN intervened immediately. General Douglas MacArthur led a bold counteroffensive, the famous amphibious landing at Incheon. Allied forces regained lost ground and even pushed northward up to the Chinese border. But then China responded. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers crossed the border to defend North Korea. The conflict became even more brutal. The front lines shifted like waves. Advances, retreats, bombings, massacres. Millions of civilians trapped between two fires. For 3 years, the war consumed the peninsula and held the world in suspense. In July 1953, an armistice was signed. Not a peace treaty, just a pause. The border at the 38th parallel was reinstated. A demilitarized zone was created, the most tense on the planet. And so North and South Korea remain to this day technically at war. The consequences were human losses, over 2 million dead, including soldiers and civilians, a divided peninsula, 2 enemy Koreas, 2 systems, 2 worlds. A Cold War precedent. The US and the USSR were no longer just rivals, they intervened. The birth of the Korean miracle. South Korea rose from the ashes with extraordinary economic growth, and a North that became isolated, hermetic, with a regime that turned dynastic and nuclear. The Korean War never officially ended. Its consequences still shape international politics, and its border, now watched by drones, weapons, and silence, remains a reminder that the wounds of the past do not always heal,